Have you ever wondered where you really stand with God? Are you overcome with feelings of guilt because of things you've done wrong? Are you tired of religion that focuses on rules that you can't keep? Have we got good news for you? It's time to listen in on some casual conversation with Mike Kapler and Joel Brueseke and discover what true freedom is all about. This is Growing in Grace.
Hi, I'm Mike, along with Joel. Time for another edition of Growing in Grace. About 15 minutes with us each week. Thanks for sharing with a friend, too. Joel, hope you're doing okay.
I think I am. I'm doing, yeah, sure.
Yeah. But
Let me check.
Which way did he go?
Let me, I loved that cartoon.
Yeah, wasn't that on Bugs Bunny? Wasn't that the Robin Hood Bugs Bunny that did that voice?
Was it? Which way did he go? Wasn't that a hound or something? I don't know.
It sounds like something from Looney Tunes.
Yeah, it's a Looney Tunes thing. And as soon as we got done here, I'm sure we're going to remember who it was. And that was fun. I loved those old Looney Tunes things.
He gives to the rich and takes from the poor. Or no, he takes from the rich and gives to the poor.
I'll have to look that up. I'll have to Google that one up.
Yeah, it'll be a fun one to Google. Spend some time. Those old Looney Tunes things are good. My kids watch the Disney Channel too, and they show some old like Mickey Mouse, the old stuff with Pluto and Mickey and Minnie and Donald Duck and all that. I like those old ones too. But I think I like Looney Tunes better. That was always my favorite. Bugs Bunny, the Roadrunner, all that good stuff.
They don't make them like that anymore.
Not at all. Well, we've been spending some time talking about some really interesting things, I think. The whole idea that God has given us everything that pertains to life and godliness, everything. He's not fallen short in giving us anything. And when we see ourselves kind of falling short in the living out of it, it's not up to us to struggle and strive to try to produce all this great fruit for God. And you can listen to, maybe some of our last few weeks' worth of programs, if you haven't, to kind of get up to speed with where we're at right now, how we came to this conclusion. But, the thing is that some people, begin getting an idea of their identity in Christ, and then maybe some false legalistic teaching comes along and they forget the truth that they are already the righteousness of God in Christ Jesus. They are already a partaker of the divine nature. They're already a new creation. There's nothing that stands in between them and God. Just recently, I had been corresponding with somebody who had been growing in his identity in Christ, and yet at times, because of false teachings, because of legalism in his own mind, wherever that came from, whether it came from other people or his own misunderstanding of the Scriptures. I mean, this type of legalistic thinking can come from all kinds of different directions. And it led this person to really some deep depression. Not only depression, but the type of guilt and condemnation that just makes you despondent, and it makes you, it just really drives you down. He got to the point where even he would be driving along, and if he went a mile over the speed limit, oh God, I'm sorry, and he would confess, and he'd go through all these things, realizing all along that I don't need to do this. I don't need to micromanage everything. But that legalism can just seep in like that and can strangle a person, so to speak, and make it really hard to live life. And what is sad about that, not just the fact that it makes a person feel condemned and guilty and despondent, but it's the opposite of what we're supposed to be experiencing in our life in Christ. It is for freedom that Christ has set us free. Stand firm in that freedom, is what Paul tells us. We're supposed to be free. We're supposed to be full of joy. And I'm not using the word supposed to as a must, but as, hey, this is our new life in Christ. He's given us this life of joy and this freedom, and we get to enjoy it. And so it's kind of sad when people aren't able to experience that when it's what Christ died for.
Yeah, and that's real life stuff. I mean, going one mile over the speed limit and feeling guilty about it. But you know what the legalist and the religionists will do, Joel? They'll check that guy's speedometer and find out that it was off by 1 mile an hour and that he was actually going 2 miles per hour over. And so that confession of sin being only 1 mile per hour over isn't good enough. He's going to have to go back and confess that it was really 2 miles per hour over the speed limit. And that's what religion does. That's what the Pharisees did.
It's never good enough.
And you know what we talked about before, Joel, in recent weeks, where Peter said it's evidence when godly qualities that reside in you, this new nature that's full of love and fruit and compassion and perseverance and self-control, all these good things that dwell in the believer because of the new nature of God in us. If these things are not manifested, it's evidence that it could be because somebody has forgotten they were forgiven from their past sins. Because what happens, Joel, when somebody walks in guilt and condemnation? When they feel that way, those qualities of God that rest in us usually don't flow out of us as well because we're not resting in them. We're frustrated. We're guilty. What happened when Adam sinned? He hid, and that's what a lot of believers do because they haven't understood who they are in Christ and haven't either realized or have forgotten that they were forgiven of all their past sins, past, present, and future, for that matter, all their sins.
Yeah, and I think a lot of it sometimes is rooted in this, well, obviously, rooted in this performance-based Christianity. This whole idea that Christ came to make us better performers in front of God. And that can be, those are legitimate fruits. You know, it's legitimate fruit to have our lives changed, for our behavior to change. But in so many cases, it's rooted, the Christian life for so many people, from a legalistic perspective, is rooted in behavior change. It's rooted in performance for God, rather than that being the fruit. It's a difference between the root and the fruit, so to speak, where the root needs to be God's grace and His love and our new identity in Christ. And as we grow in our understanding of that, and so on and so forth, as we've talked about a lot on this program, as we grow in that, we'll see some of that fruit. But when the root is performance, and when the root is changed behavior, and we don't see that, then we begin wondering if we're ever going to get it right. And so that kind of leads us, to something that we wanted to talk about. A lot of people are thinking, well, gee, I did something wrong. I messed up. I wonder if God will give me a second chance. And you hear this expression. I've heard this expression. There's a song, or probably more than one song in the Christian music world. There are people who will say this: God is a God of second chances. On the one hand, that is a really exciting thing. It sounds really good. It's from a grace perspective, it sounds really good. But this is something that's huge to me, something that I realized a few years ago. Is God really a God of second chances? Did He even give me a chance in the first place to get it right? Was God expecting me to somehow get it right, and then if I failed, well, He would just give me a second chance? And so, I don't know, what do you think about that, Cap? Is God a God of second chances? Is He a God of a first chance, even?
Well, it is one of those phrases that sounds good. It sounds right, sounds spiritual. It just sounds that way, but it's really not accurate. Look, when you fall into guilt and condemnation, which no believer ever should, that's problem number one. Not understanding what has been provided for us through the finished work of Christ. That's problem number one. So when people do fall into guilt and condemnation, either through some sort of religious teaching or some sort of tradition, or maybe even their own thinking, they are looking for a way out. They want to get out of this position of guilt and condemnation and back into God's good graces, quote unquote. They want to be right with God, not realizing, Joel, that they already are right with God as a believer in Christ. So there's the problem. But people cry out for a second chance, and so they do things like rededicating their life, getting baptized, going to confession, communion, different things that are all fine and good, in their proper place, but not to try to become somebody that you already are. And that is a forgiven, righteous child of God. And so is God the God of second chances? I don't think so. Like you said, He knew we would never get it right in the first place. He never expected us to get it right. That's why He came. That's why he came, he saw, he conquered, as the saying goes. It's an old Petra song, too, by the way. He did it all. And so to think that somehow he's going to give me another chance to get it right, it ain't going to happen. Now, I can rest in him and allow this life to flow through me. Am I going to live perfectly, according to the righteous requirement of the old covenant? No, absolutely not. It just isn't going to happen. And I know there's some self-righteous people out there who think they're doing really well, and that's great. It's just that it's not about how well I can do. It's about how much I can trust in him. When you're in a close relationship with somebody, and this really is all about relationship, when you lose the trust factor in that relationship, that's a really uncomfortable place to be. And so being able to trust in what he has done and know that I don't have to worry about second chances with God anymore.
Yeah, we a few years ago, several years ago, my wife and I were helping out with a youth group in a church, and one of the kids he cracked me up. It was funny, but yet it wasn't, because he would come up to me every so often, and he would say, Joel, I got saved again, and he was so excited because for whatever reason he thought that he had lost his salvation somehow through something he had done or through not living up to the expectations that he thought he was supposed to live up to. And so he went back to the altar and, quote, got saved again. And the same thing can happen with those who go back week after week or month after month or whenever it is to rededicate themselves. I think you used that word a minute or two ago. This whole idea that, okay, the first time I dedicate myself, or the first time, quote, that I get saved, all right, I did it, I got saved, or I dedicated myself to the Lord, and oh man, now I've gone and messed up, and so a period of time goes by, and then I rededicate myself to the Lord. Okay, it's my second chance. God's giving me a new chance to dedicate myself to Him and to get it right. Well, you're right, Cap. He never even gave us a chance in the first place because he never left it up to us. It's not about us. It's not about my dedication to God. Is it good to be dedicated to God? Sure. I mean, it's a great response to His dedication to us. It's a fruit of who He has made us to be. But it's not like He's giving us chance after chance after chance to get it right. I mean, does God give us 10 chances and finally He thinks we're going to get it right? Does He give us 100 chances? Does He give us 1,000, 1 billion chances? Of course not. He's not expecting us to get it right. It's the fact that He got it right, and now we get to live in the freedom that's been provided for us because He got it right for us. And so with that said, this whole idea of rededicating our lives to Christ, I mean, if He doesn't give us all these chances, as we've been talking about today, is He looking for us to dedicate our lives to Him and rededicate our lives to Him and rededicate our lives to Him? We'll talk about that next week right here on Growing in Grace.
This has been Growing in Grace with Mike Kapler and Joel Brizicki, heard online through various internet sources around the world each week. To access hundreds of past programs, visit graceroots.org. Share it with a friend and listen again next week for more Growing in Grace.